Welcome to the UK Dementia and Palliative Care Conference 2026 podcast, brought to you by Rowcroft Hospice. Recorded at the beautiful Buckfast Abbey Conference Centre in Devon, this series explores the critical role of dementia and palliative care in supporting those living with dementia. Across these episodes, we'll be sharing expert insights, real-life experiences, and innovative approaches to improving care. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started.
Good morning, everyone. My husband Guy and I, as Sally said, were at this conference 2 years ago. Guy gave this opening address. He spoke as a doctor who was living with dementia. Guy was diagnosed with early-onset dementia in 2021. He was admitted to hospital this time last year and in September moved to a nursing home. We've been married for 41 years and this is our story. Accepting a dementia diagnosis is, of course, a massive challenge. We learn to accept it at different rates and in different ways. In the early stages, I was positive and optimistic. Guy was withdrawn and frustrated. We had some support from organisations for a few weeks post-diagnosis, but we were given too much information too soon. Guy said it was like being pushed off the end of a diving board. Support workers tried to cram in everything we should know into the short time they'd been allocated to us. We assimilated very little of this information, and then it stopped. There are no Admiral nurses in our area, and the only way of getting advice was to phone or email support groups or charities. The problem with that is they don't know you. You speak to someone different each time, and you have to repeat your story over and over. Our relationship changed profoundly. Guy was getting increasingly de-skilled, and that meant I had to become increasingly skilled. Finances, passwords, bills, driving, house maintenance, DIY gardening, all transferred from him to me. YouTube became my best friend. How to paint a skirting board in a carpeted room. How to paint properly. Who knew? How to hold on to an electric drill. I lost a lot of plaster that day. Solution, put up a much bigger picture to cover the hole. We'd moved house just before Guy's diagnosis, so there was a lot to do. The advice was, make the most of your time in the early stages. Learn to live well with dementia. So we did that. Carried on with our lives. We planned holidays, we planned trips, we invested in our family. We tried to tick off some of our retirement bucket list, but it was soon evident that these activities were beginning to cause Guy huge anxiety, and for me, they brought exhaustion. Our retirement plans had to take a radical turn, and I found that the hardest of all, as my identity was slipping away. And Guy needed more and more help. I had had many different roles in my professional career. That all changed, and my job became carer. This wasn't a job that I'd apply for, and for which I wasn't paid. But the biggest issue for me was that, unlike all my other roles, I had no training. YouTube couldn't solve this one. What I needed was a person who understood dementia, who would contact us regularly, where I didn't have to repeat our story every time. I needed one person who knew us. A phone call or a video call would have done it. As the disease progressed, there was an unbearable weight of responsibility on me. There is a huge disconnect between hospital and GP care for dementia patients, and we fell between the cracks. Cancer patients get a designated specialist nurse for their journey. We really needed a person like that. Guy and I tried local support groups and carers groups, but we found that we were so much younger than everyone else. Guy volunteered for everything that he felt he could manage. The kindness of strangers in our church community was amazing. Some people just got it. And Guy was able to find some status and agency with those people. He was incredibly sociable and he loved talking to people, an extension of his 35 years as a GP. He was always open about his diagnosis. He was very well aware that he was on the wrong side of the clipboard, but he accepted all advice and medication, whether or not he agreed with it. Good friends walked the journey with us. If we were going out to dinner, I would WhatsApp them in advance and suggest good strategies for including Guy, so we muddled through. Those were the early and mid stages. Advanced and end-stage dementia is a whole different thing. When I went to groups, I didn't want to hear about the advanced stages. I would close my ears, I would walk away. That wasn't going to happen to us. It was an unbearable prospect. But it did happen to us. Advanced dementia is a whole different thing, and we were walking into the Shadowlands. It's interesting that Wendy Mitchell, in her excellent books on dementia, does separate the stages. This book is about diagnosis, living well and coping, whereas this one is about end stages, or what Wendy calls going over the edge. In this stage, friends are of limited help. Support groups are irrelevant because you can't go out. I was with a group of carer spouses recently who are currently in this stage. I asked them how they would describe their experience of caring at home in the advanced stage of dementia. Exhausting, guilt-ridden, helpless, hopeless, terrifying, and most of all, alone. The doors are locked. The prospect of residential care is there, but the guilt is huge. And the decision is like the sword of Damocles hanging over you. I can cope. There are good bits. I can carry on a bit longer. Trying to live well with dementia at this stage is expensive. To get a night's sleep, you need to pay a sitter. Mine was £300 a night, and even then I hardly slept as Guy was in and out of the room. To go out for a walk or to an exercise class is expensive. You need a PA who you pay by the hour. So that can be £50 for an afternoon. I didn't even know what a PA was or how to find one until I was well into this phase. Neither Guy nor I was living well. A feature of Guy's dementia is that he's very mobile. He's impelled to keep moving. That was okay when his balance was good, but it isn't now, and he's on end-of-life care. It's hard to nurse someone who can't stay still or lie down. Hospitals and hospices are not geared up for that. I know we have some talks later on that will explore this. Guy's been sent to A&E 4 times. Keeping him on a trolley in a corridor for hours is impossible and humiliating for everyone. Corridor care and dementia do not work. But there appears to be no alternative. Not in the hospitals we went to anyway. Once he'd been stitched up and discharged, there were more long waits for appropriate transport. Further humiliation. Guy's also difficult to care for because he has a flexed neck and scoliosis of the spine. So you can't look him in the eye unless he's lying down, which is rare. Anasphasia means he can't tell us if he's hurting or if he's hungry. So we rely on the expertise of care staff. So this is our story. It's not over. Guy knows a better place awaits him at the end. But for the moment, we're in the waiting room. Dementia is a very complex disease. The challenges are huge, but not insurmountable. Of course, it needs more funding, but it also needs some smart decision-making. I hope that as we share our ideas and solutions today, we'll find some of that smart. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the UK Dementia and Palliative Care Conference 2026 podcast. A huge thank you to our headline sponsor, Audley, event sponsor, Wallens, and to Dementia UK for their invaluable support. This series is recorded and produced by iNarrator and proudly hosted by Rowcroft Hospice. Links to resources mentioned are available in the show notes. If you found this discussion valuable, please share it and stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care.